found out when I left school and also left home the same day. I couldn't stop school and stay at home. It was never going to fly with my parents, at least not with my father for sure. And I also felt that if I was going to start my own business, I really want to give it every opportunity. So, so really, at that stage, I guess I was just turning 15. Um, I went ahead and looked in the neighborhood. I said, look, you know, I'm going to just take a chance. So I found uh, a 1.5 room apartment, actually 5 blocks away from my parents' house. I didn't want to move too far, you know. I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm like 15 years old. I mean, how am I going to take care of myself? But I found this 1.5 room apartment on the Carry. I was on my own, and at that point, I started contacting people to offer my services as a disc jockey because that was my source of revenue at that point. I was always confident. I never had any belief that this wasn't going to happen. There wasn't a lot of disc jockeys then. I may have been even the first disc jockey. People were booking bands. And, you know, they were saying, well, what are you, if you're a radio announcer, what are you going to do at a party? And I said, no, I'm not a radio announcer. I'm a mobile disc jockey. You know, that's the term that I coined. I made cards at that point and was able to work quite regularly. Way back then, there was something in Verdun called the Dawson Youth Club. I did that. I did the YMHA, the YMCA. I contacted some high schools and started doing, like, you know, sock hops at high schools. Basically, I was a one-person operator. I was strictly me, the disc jockey, making myself available. I'd call someone if it was a Christmas party and it was on a Saturday night and I was booked already. I'd say, well, look, you know, book me on the Friday and I'll give you 25% off. You know, I really had to hustle to get the work because, you know, this was my only source of revenue, of course. At one point, you know, I was getting a lot of gigs and I found another person and I said, you know, would you like to do some parties for me? And he said, sure. So I got more equipment, had a second person out there, had one price for me and a price for a second disc jockey from my company, which at that time was called Superior Sound. Very quickly, you know, I had the 2 systems booked, and not too long after that, went to a third. So all of a sudden, I'm saying, wait a second, you know, this is coming together because, you know, we're now charging, you know, $125 a night, and I'm getting, you know, $125 for each of the 2 guys, and $175 for me, and my expenses were not that high, so it sort of was now coming together. You know, maybe I was around, you know, maybe just getting, you know, 16, 17, when the DJ gigs started to multiply, because I was really a forerunner, and you know, people were saying, well, this is great music, let's call this guy. And quite regularly, you know, we were turning down bookings, but I didn't want to expand too much because the more systems you had on the road, there was more chance that something could go wrong, and it was really very important then, just like it is now, to make sure that my customers are happy. People started then to call, you know, for, you know, we're getting married, do you have classical musicians? And no, but let me call you back. And then I'd call the Musicians Guild and I'd say, you know, what kind of classical musicians are available in Montreal? They said, well, you know, there's harp, there's violin, there's flute. So I got the name of these musicians and then started to set up associations with musicians, where I started booking musicians for ceremony and getting a commission from them. Then eventually got into booking top 40 bands. Mid to late 60s, I probably had 20 bands that I booked. So it's now turned into a full-fledged booking agency. We were booking tons of high schools, you know, and there would be a high school committee, and I would meet the people and get to know them and become friends with them, and I may have got 4, 5, 6, 7 high school bookings from each of these high schools. So it was really a lot of coordination. I then hired a lady to work for me. Her name was Leslie Rust. She was the first person that worked for myself way back in the 60s, and she was really excellent with business, and she was the one that coordinated everything because the paperwork was getting big time, and at that stage, you know, we didn't have a computer. It was all done, you know, hard copy on contracts and carbon paper. But any given weekend could be, you know, could easily be 15 bookings. So it was really massive coordination. But word was starting to spread that you know, Sheldon Kagan is now able to provide all your entertainment needs. I had a great time at that. But I think I probably worked much harder than most people at that stage in their life.